Welcome back to Inbox Talk. I'm Liz.
And I'm Evan.
And today we're going to be talking about IP addresses.
Yeah. So email sending is a little bit more technically involved than taking just an email from my account and getting it to your inbox. There's kind of a path that has to go through to get all the way across the internet, even if, again, it's from my laptop over here to your laptop
even
over
if
there.
we're sitting right next to each other.
Exactly.
There's still a big path to go through.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking us through what that path actually looks like?
Yeah, we don't need to get into too many of the details, but we do have a kind of a handy graphic to show what this looks like from a little bit more technical perspective.
Perfect. Let's take a look. All right, Evan. So I'm an e-commerce marketer. I've built this beautiful email for a big promotion coming up on Saturday. I selected my recipients and I'm sending it out to everyone. I schedule it and I press send. What exactly happens next?
Yeah, so at that point, our system's going to kind of take the handoff and start actually building the email to make it ready to send. You've got a visual representation of it. We need to actually kind of put that into place and put the all the required bricks there.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do that, we hand it off to our actual sending, and it kind of goes through a series of spots on the internet to actually go and get to the recipient's inbox. There's a few spots in between here, specifically where you can see where it says like spam and virus blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And then also when you see like the company network, those are two spots where you could potentially run into trouble based off of your sending reputation or if you're present on a blacklist. These are two of the areas where you may say some emails come in for certain people and not for others. That's going to be more at the company sort of level. But if you're on a big enough blacklist, it may get completely blocked before it even actually gets to the recipient side of things.
So the spam and virus blocker piece and then the company network would be like the goalkeepers of your inbox when I'm trying to land there.
Right, and they're cheating because they have two goalkeepers.
Ugh.
It's totally not fair.
Gosh, okay. Sports ball. Perfect. So you mentioned blacklists.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about those.
Blacklists are one of the few things that can impact your ability to get an email through, even if you're actually a good sender.
Okay.
So that's kind of why they're a little bit more scary and kind of why they're stigmatized quite a bit. Again, the idea behind blacklists, very similar to spam traps, is that they're there to prevent bad senders from continuing to send.
Okay.
They can impact you at a couple of different levels, whether it's at a domain level. So again, that's tied more heavily into what you're doing, or an IP address level, which we talked about in kind of a previous episode. But those are the things, the IP address side of it is stuff that we monitor and kind of keep track of.
Okay. That sounds good to me. So even if you're a good sender, we still want to be aware of those, but it's meant to protect us from those bad senders out there.
Correct.
Perfect. So what do we do if we are running up against blacklists? What can be done?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different blacklist companies out there. Some of them have a lot more kind of sway than others. There are ones that you can filter on and off of and not really see any sort of impact in deliverability. And then there's some that if you're on, it's all hands on deck.
It's actually impacting everything.
Outside of that, there's individual inbox providers that have their own sort of algorithms and things like that can impact whether an email is going to land properly. Again, Gmail being a notorious example of this. We mention them a lot only because they're such a huge lion's share of the emails out there, but they also interact with your standard blacklists as well. The easiest way that you can make sure that you're not running up against them is to have good sending from the get-go.
Okay.
But if you do end up landing on one, then you can actually request to be delisted.
Okay.
In some cases, they're going to require you to provide information about the emails that you've been sending or what your opt-in practices are. Spamhaus being one of the more notorious ones for having very stringent criteria, but they're also one of the most well-known. They can require you to switch to double opt-in if you're not currently using it. Which is one of the bigger implementation things. They may ask you to be you need to do all of this or we will not unblock you.
We've got to be aggressive.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about taking action on the blacklist, you find yourself on there, what should the viewers at home, what should they know, or who do they reach out to when they see that this is becoming an issue? Is it someone here, or is there an outside service that they reach out to?
Most of these companies have their own sort of way of delisting, so it may not be something that you have to reach out to us directly on.
Okay.
It kind of depends on what got listed. So if you're seeing that emails aren't going through, reaching out to us here in support, we can help you identify that. And if it's a problem on the drip side, if we haven't already taken care of it, then that's something that we'll go and kind of get on immediately. That's what me and my team kind of do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But But if for some reason it is something that's specific to your domain, at least that way we can help you identify it so you can reach out to them and go through and get that sorted out.
And I've heard you talk to customers quite a bit on these particular topics.
Yeah.
It's not a place that I live and breathe in, but as you mentioned, your team is always talking to those different providers and figuring out how can you help our customers maintain a safe listing and not being impacted by that. So I think just knowing that we're here to support you, reach out to our support team, ask questions, be curious about it, and then we'll be able to help take action as needed.
Yeah, even something as simple as like, you may be like, well, who do I reach out to? And we may have the postmaster address available for you.
Okay.
And just be like, yep, cool, here's who you reach out to. That can save you some time. So.
Okay, good to know, definitely. Let's see here. So whitelisting is also something that you mentioned. What is that, just the exact opposite of blacklist, or what does that mean?
Yeah, they're not quite the same thing. There isn't like global whitelists out there.
Okay.
It's more of an action that an individual person can take.
Okay.
So if you've ever gotten an email that says, please whitelist us to make sure our emails come through, that's a pretty good representation of what that is because it's specific to you. In some cases, it can be company-wide. So let's say that your entire company of 50 people sign up for an email list because it's like one of your partners or something like that.
The platform you're using. Or
Yeah. Like a security alerts or something like that. Everybody on your team may want to get those, but because this email is going to 50 addresses that all look really similar, that might start looking like spam, especially if not everyone's reading them whenever they get sent out.
Got it.
At a company level, you can go through and say, no, we're going to accept any emails that come from this, regardless of reputation, regardless of blacklist, etc. To just, again, make sure that those emails are going to land. You can also do that as like, an individual person or as a, consumer to make sure that if you are really interested in getting any updates from people, you can go and set that up. It's going to vary quite a bit by, individual inbox providers, but most of them have a guide on how to do that. But if that's not something that we can specifically like whitelist your domain, each individual person that you're trying to email would have to do that. So it's kind of a big undertaking.
And I've seen it from a couple customers where they'll encourage their, like during a welcome email or something, they'll encourage their customers to whitelist so that they can continue to receive those messages. Is that common practice that you would see that, or maybe just on a couple one-off cases that they do that?
Yeah, I've seen it, we've seen it a couple times, but it's not something that's super common anymore.
Okay.
And the other question that we get about that is like, if people do whitelist us, can they still unsubscribe? And you most certainly can.
Okay.
Because that should stop the emails from being sent at all.
Consumers should always have that ability to choose their preference.
Right.
Whitelisting it is never going to take that away.
Yeah. Again, like as we get more and more into the weeds, you can whitelist something and then unsubscribe. So if you're getting receipts from a company, they will always come through.
Oh, okay.
As a weird example.
Okay.
But it's something that does come up. So.
Okay. No, definitely good to know. So as an e-commerce marketer, it's probably not something that I'm going to encourage my customer base or new subscribers to whitelist my emails, because the main goal is usually to promote a product, get a sale out there, get that type of messaging.
Yeah.
I think it's, in my experience, has been a little bit more common for like info marketers.
Yeah, transactional emails tend to be like, again, it's something that you as a consumer are requesting.
Okay.
And so you're expecting it. There isn't as much content going out. You're not getting necessarily like weekly or daily emails from
hey, here's this new product. This one's 30% off today. Whatever that might be.
And that may be the case, that you are actually sending that number of emails out. But it just doesn't tend to be the types of interaction that you're seeing.
Okay.
If you are doing like a paired thing where you're selling products and also doing like info marketing alongside that, or like you're doing, like digests or things like that along like related to your product, that may be something that you end up including.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
Definitely something to consider if that's the type of content that you'll be sending out, or it would fit your business model too.
Yeah.
Okay. So as an e-commerce marketer, it's probably not something that I would talk much about whitelisting. My main goal of my emails would be get a product promoted. It's a, new to the store. There's a discount coming up this weekend. That's a little bit different messaging than, like I see info marketers have used a whitelisting language before, or they've prompted the people on their list to whitelist their emails.
Yeah.
Is that a trend that you would also see?
Yeah, we'll see it more with people who do like a kind of combined approach. So they're selling specific products and then they're also distributing information or like paired up items along with it.
Yep.
Not specific like product promotions. It really depends on the number of emails that you're sending. If you're getting 12 or 15 emails per month to an individual person, that may be something that you want to do whitelisting just so that you know that they're getting through.
Okay.
But again, like if your engagement rates are good enough and you know your customers, it may not be required. So it's very business dependent.
So as we talk about blacklists, could you tell me how they interact when it comes to a shared or dedicated IP?
Yeah, shared IPs are kind of the baseline. So when you first sign up for Drip, that's what you're going to be using. There's a lot of benefits to this, and also again some kind of cons. So let's kind of break those down. Most email providers, when they are first getting started, they just don't have enough volume to actually be on their own IP address. The recommendation is like multiple millions of emails from a single IP to actually kind of like maintain a reputation. We kind of get that by putting all of our customers into kind of a large pool, and that's going to help to, if there are issues that happen, whether that be spam complaints or bounces or anything along those lines, you're going to have that mitigated by other people who are also doing good sending. So we, as Drip, are going to monitor anybody that we're seeing like large amounts of bounces or large amounts of spam complaints or like big spam trap hits. All those sort of things we're going to help police, so you don't have to worry about anybody else who's kind of in that shared pool.
If you were to have one bad instance, you're not watching everything just plummet. You're maintained by everybody, as well as our deliverability team that's managing all of those shared IPs in the pool.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. The analogy that we tend to use is like if you think about a large lake, you know, again, I hate to talk about pollution in lakes, but like a little bit of it isn't going to necessarily sink the entire thing.
Okay.
And so that's the big benefit.
It's also it's not good to put pollution in
I
water,
know,
but that's
I know,
okay.
I know,
Okay.
I know.
Just wanted to make that clear.
So yeah, if a individual IP address gets blacklisted inside of a pool, that is going to make it so you're only partially impacted. You know, there's going to be one out of a handful of IP addresses that may have issues, but even being on a single blacklist isn't necessarily going to completely prevent that from delivering emails.
Yep.
Just because we've built out that reputation over like years of sending from that, that definitely kind of helps. You know, they may get deferred or they may get monitored to actually make sure that the content is good. But again, it kind of depends on how severe the listing is. So.
Okay. So in general, they're being protected by that large pool, you guys, and it's less for the individual brand to maintain of themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the strength in numbers idea.
Yep.
So.
Okay. So when we talk about people that are in that space where they might be broaching into the multiple millions of emails each month, is there general rules of thumb or guidelines that we'd even want to consider before we open up the conversation of a dedicated IP?
Yeah, I mean, there is some additional cost involved, but also it helps you have a more kind of direct line to monitor your own deliverability. So you have access to, since you know the exact IP address that everything is going to be coming from, and all your emails kind of filter through that, that makes it a lot easier to make sure that if there are dips or if there are reports that are coming through for spam, you can just really be keyed into that. So it's an additional level of responsibility on your part because it is like solely based on you. Any hits that come through, they're only going to affect you. So you don't have that reliability of having anybody else sending through your IP address, obviously. But that also means that, you know, anything that you do that's good is going to be, it's all you, it's magnified. So that ties back into the domain reputation side of stuff.
Perfect. Customers that I've worked with that have been on dedicated IPs, it's usually something that they know that they have the larger volume, so they have the team that can maintain it. They know the tools to use. We can help guide along the way as well. But they understand what would be involved in that because they're taking the responsibility away from Drip and owning that themselves. So I think that's just an important thing to point out as well, that you have all the power, but with that comes a lot of responsibility too. So for some, it's definitely a pro. For others, they might not want that, and they might like the idea of you guys maintaining and watching everything for them, right?
Yeah, it really depends on, again, how much kind of person power you can put behind that. So, yeah.
Cool. So I think I feel good about IPs. Anything that you want to close it out with?
No, that's it. Again, if you have questions, reach out to the support team. Us on the deliverability side of things are always happy to go and dig into the records and see if we can't find anything that's going on. So.
All right. Well, thanks guys for joining, and we'll see you next time.